I'm gonna go through the React Native Fabric thread. I think there's some interesting stuff that's going on in the GitHub issues, and I'm going to read through them for fun. So this is the issue. It is React Native Fabric UI layer re-architecture number 4. So this guy, Kelset, Lorenzo Scandania, whatever. So he talks about the JavaScript interface that the Fabric utilizes. Fabric is just a name for the re-architecture. And the Turbo module is the re-architecture of the native modules. So in my previous video, I briefly talked about this re-architecture, the JavaScript interface, and the Turbo module. And so here, they have got the links for the new architecture at the React Conf. And then some Twitter slides, which is kind of hard to understand what they're talking about if you don't know. And then there's an internal Facebook video, which is also quite technical. Valentin Schergen, so he talked about what Fabric is. So he sees Fabric as an effort to modernize the rendering layer of React Native. So a lot of the shadow layer, so the shadow tree will be written in C++ as opposed to Java. Immutable data structures, shared memory ownership between JS and React Native. So here he's talking about instead of JavaScript grabbing the actual object, so we need to serialize an object through the bridge and then serialize that object from JavaScript back from the bridge to the native, right? That's kind of a waste. JavaScript should just hold a reference to it. So we don't need to pass this object back and forth between native and JS. JSI is the interlope layer between JavaScript and native, type-safe data structures. So Fabric is all about modern, easy to interlope. Okay, performing UI. Okay, cool. So this guy asked, what's the timeline for the stable release? And then what he says no public timeline. What does Fabric mean for developers? Well, it's an internal thing. It just makes the performance a lot better. How does JSI differ from the React Native bridge? Well, so bridge is part of React Native, but JSI is not part of React Native. It's a lightweight general purpose API theoretically. So I think this really is going to change once the JSI is announced, because this is from August 2018. That's almost like 6 months ago. So what is native script? I don't know what that is. So I don't know what this is talking about. What side effects can we expect? Decreased build times. Well, I mean, it's a modern re-architecture, so I don't think it's clear what the side effects is at this point. How much JavaScript, how much Java Objective-C code will be in the end. The goal is to have as small amount of platform-specific code as possible. So I wonder if it's possible to write C++ native code. And somebody can answer that. Share benchmark results. So yeah, that's too early. How will the removal of view managers affect animated and use native driver? I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. React Native SVG text layout algorithm. Implement in C++ as opposed to Objective-C. So it looks like it is possible to implement native modules from Objective-C and Java. So he answers this question again. How will the removal of view managers affect animated use native driver? Native animation drivers has to be rewritten. We plan to invest in this year. Classic animation will work out because set native props. So I'm assuming the set native props is needs to pass stuff from the native side to the JavaScript side. So I think that's why the performance for animation is not very good in React Native. And this guy talks about React Native Bridge. This guy has a problem with flip animation. Doc says the new layout may not, okay, I don't think that's relevant. So, will Fabric allow us to guarantee the execution on layout before the layout is reflected on screen, or am I barking the wrong tree? On layout is an async event from native to JS. So unless native guarantees the event is dispatched. So yeah, so I think the idea is to get rid of async as much as possible for important UI work. So they have a synchronous initial rendering, where UI layout happens synchronously until the content is ready to be displayed. And then this guy says something interesting. He says, will React Native rearchitecture yield performance as good as Flutter? And of course, people here are biased. So we don't know. John Ohucho, he has an idea. He says the reason he stopped React Native was because of performance with navigation. He tried 5 different navigation libraries. And something else he noticed is the app startup keep on getting slower and slower as the app grew large, which means React Native is not a scalable solution if your app gets bigger and bigger. And he's really hoping the rearchitecture would fix this issue, right? So will sync communication between native and JS will be possible to use native table view and sales being rendered in JS? So this guy has some really good questions. It's been 7 minutes, I should stop. So the proper response is, well, Fabric is a foundation that's meant to help improve things, including navigation and lists. But Fabric itself will not solve that, but will be able to enable actual solutions. So his response is, in the new React Native architecture, whether even rendering can be synchronized, I believe iOS UI table view requires synchronized rendering of sales. That means React should render return native cell view and table view in the synchronized way. Support a new architecture where the render be always synchronous. Oh, I'm very curious. Yes, Fabric supports synchronous rendering. However, relying on UI table view is not the only way to implement smooth and fluid lists. I see. Okay, so I gotta stop here. So this should give you a brief overview of what they want Fabric to be and the promise that Fabric brings to React Native. Whether that is actually the case remains to be seen. Hopefully they release this soon so we can all try this out. Very excited.